the talk coming out about the Raps is more so
Nobody wants to deal with
them not really showing their cards in terms of what they want to do. We're hearing a lot of Raptors rumors, but Michael Grange lately, in a recent article, said that the Raptors don't see themselves as that inferior, if at all, to the Miami Heat, who have made the NBA Finals 2 of the last 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of pins the Toronto Raptors as bringing it back, as we talked about last week when I said I think they're going to re-sign Fred VanVleet and just overpay him to stay. And I know that's not what Raptors fans want to hear. I know that's not really what most NBA people want to hear, because we want trades. We want all these things to go down. But here we are a couple of days before the draft, and I don't see the Raptors trading up. And I still think I'm standing by it. And now you're getting like legitimate people, not myself, just sitting on my couch watching the Raptors games here. But I honestly feel like their move is just to run it back. And more so, it's a business decision. MLSE is not in the business of tanking, for one. 2, if you're going to tank, it would have been last season instead of trading at the trade deadline to improve your team, or so they thought, improve their team. But right now, here's a basic situation, and I'll leave this because this is the boring number side of it. Essentially, the Raptors have about $60 million in this offseason to play with, right? You have 3 pending free agents in terms of Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., and Jakob Poeltl. To bring them all back would obviously cost more than $60 million. So I've been saying I think Fred's going to take up about 30 of that. But I flip this to you guys. Should the Raptors be in this run it back phase, or should they be trying to move on off of one of Siakam or OG, or let Fred walk and just continue this rebuild?
Tones?
As my dog barks here, she's pissed because the Raps should be blowing this up, man. They should be blowing this up. Like, enough. I understand the business side of it, Shell. I think you bringing that up is a very astute observation by you. But what are you trying to do here? You're not the Miami Heat. You're not. You don't have that dude that, like, you don't have a Jimmy Butler. And with respect to Siakam, like, he's not going to carry you 3+ rounds deep. He's not going to do it. So until you find that guy, what is the point of just making the plan and just hoping for the best, right? And let's not act like this Miami run was like perfectly, they planned this and all that. They almost lost in the plan. We've talked about that, like, you know, ad nauseum, right? Like, this all could have been for naught. And, like, why would you want to be that? So, you know, it's sports, it's finicky. Like, all it takes is one bounce. All it takes is one guy to get really hot at one time. And, you know, we see this every single year. I mean, the Panthers are just in the finals based on a hot goalie. Jimmy Butler carried them through, you know, probably a round and a half, and they, you know, willed their way all the way to the end. And it also took them the Celtics choking and those guys not playing up to par. So I just think that's like, you're chasing your tail if you're just doing that. Blow it up, get a couple stars, and let's see what happens here.
The difference between the Raptors and the Heat, and as corny as this is going to sound, is culture. The Heat have a culture. You may not like it, you may not believe in it, but they have a clear vision from the top down. Consistency from the front office to the front court. Okay? So one thing, now the Raptors have it at the top, but they've just changed their coach, and they're hanging on to these players, which is something that Pat Riley would never do. Okay? Pat Riley, if he came into the Raptors situation, guess what? These guys would have been traded at the deadline because he knows that that roster is not good enough to win. Okay? And that's what Masai has to understand. And that's why I think he may have missed the boat here. And then now you're getting these reports that nobody really wants to deal with the Raptors because Masai is asking for too much.
I don't buy those things. That's just like, that's strictly
things are being reported, Shelly. You can't just turn a blind eye.
Listen, there's a difference between things that are being reported and things that random people we don't know on Twitter are just tweeting.
And even if that is true, who has
where
the
there's
most
smoke,
gain
there's
from
fire.
that? Teams that are trying to get their guys, right?
Like,
of course, they're trying to, like, turn the heat up. They probably have a decent sense that the fan base, or there's pressure from ownership.
You gotta rip the Band-Aid off, Tones. You got, like, I know it's gonna suck.
Hold on.
I agree.
But I say this, I keep saying this, but we keep assuming that our goals as fans and Masai's goal as wanting to win a championship are the same goals as MLSE, a corporation. And they're just not, right? Their goals, like if they make the playoffs, win a couple rounds, cool. They'll take that. Now, do you want to win a championship? Yes, but you'd rather lie to yourself and tell yourself that you're closer to the Miami Heat than you should have been to trying to make sure you get Scoot Henderson or Victor Wembanyama last year, right? You'd rather lie to yourself and be like, oh no, we could be what the Miami Heat were, which, and you said this, okay? They don't have culture. That's exactly what Masai Ujiri is trying to rebuild here with this new coaching hire, that obviously there'll be a focus on player development a lot more, and there'll be a focus on teamwork and, just not so much ISO ball, not so much, what we've seen the last couple of years in Toronto. Now, with that said, it is kind of ridiculous for the Raptors to compare themselves to the Miami Heat because of what Tone said. Jimmy Butler has that dog in him, as the kids have been saying lately, right? I don't know who that is that has that dog in them, that has the talent of Jimmy Butler on the Toronto Raptors. I think Fred has that dog in him, but he's not the same level of player that Jimmy Butler is to be able to stare down dudes in the fourth quarter of playoff games, stare down a guy like Drew Holiday, tell him that he's trash and that I'm cooking you, and continue to eliminate number one overall seeds in the playoffs, right? Like what Jimmy Butler did is complete insanity, and that can't be replicated through a Toronto Raptors roster, right? Without having Jimmy Butler. The flip side of what I will say to that, though, is when you have those superstars, you need to be hunting for those superstars. And the way to do that is through the draft, especially as the Toronto Raptors. And this is where I really think they fumbled the bag.
Hold on. Miami didn't draft Jimmy Butler.
Hold on a second here. They signed Miami is not Toronto. Miami has Miami to sell players to come to Miami. Now, Toronto's a beautiful city, but Toronto is not getting free agent superstars to come to the Toronto Raptors. We know this because we've had a history of this. For the Toronto Raptors, you have to draft. And then once you accumulate the assets, so one time Masai pushed his chips in the middle, got Kawhi, we know how that ended. But the point I'm making, though, is that you need that dude at the helm. And what you saw with Jimmy Butler is the same thing you saw with Kawhi that championship year. You have your star player put in the gangster work in the first round and second round while the other guys are trying to find their footing. The Raptors don't have that guy. The Raptors choked down a 17-point lead in the play-in game. So, again, it sucks to say, and I don't think that this should be the route that they're taking, but this is the route that they're taking, I think, where they're just going to run it back. Fred's going to get his 30-plus mil a season, kind of like that Kyle Lowry deal, about 30 mil, 3 years, some crap like that. And yeah, you're going to see you run it back with a different coach. They're going to try to bring up the bench and not run Fred and Pascal into the ground and see where that goes for a year. And then we'll be right back here next summer talking about should the Raptors trade Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby.
Just you saying this, and I'm like, as you're saying it, I'm like picturing the games that I barely watched because it was so fucking bad to watch. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, man, like, what is the point of this? We've seen it. Like, I don't get it. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Like, I'd almost rather Fred sign a big deal somewhere else. And I love Fred. I respect the guy. I remember clipping his Wichita State games. Like, I'm all good with him, right? Like, I'm all good with that. Like, I just want to see a different blend of players wearing a Toronto Raptors jersey. Let's just try something different, even if it's not successful. Can we try some excitement? Can we try to inject some new youths into this team? Like, I don't know. I don't want to see the same five out there again. It's just lame. It's boring.
I disagree with Shelley. I think a team's going to come over the top on the Raptors and offer Fred way more than the Raptors are comfortable offering him.
I hope so.
So I think that this season is going to be more of a forced rebuild than they're ready for. Because I think that the Raptors right now think that they're in the driver's seat with Fred, but I think another team's going to come over the top on him. I could be wrong, but that's just what I think.
The other thing with that, Webby, too, is like that report that we alluded to of like, oh, they're difficult to deal with. Like, I wonder if that's coming from a team or even OG's agent or something like that were like, hey, some team made the Raptors an unreal offer for OG, like really, really, really good. And they're still not taking it. And to me, that's just like, if that is true, and we, that could leak at any point here of like, hey, the Raptors just turned down 3 first-round picks for OG. Like, if that's the case, what are we doing? Like, that's just so how not to run your franchise. Well, it's just not smart.